Hello and welcome to this section. In this section, we will continue to learn about service-related operations. The content of this class is data update. In HeCode, we also provide a variety of data update-related operations. Here I will give you a simple demonstration. In the same way, we still open the case we made in the last lesson. We build another object container in the backend. The name of the reform is our data update, and then we add a service in the data update. The content of the service is our data update. Here I make a simple assumption, that is, what kind of business scenario we want to do. In such data, we can add an editing interface later, and then when he clicks edit, we can update one of our data. Therefore, in data update, it includes we have a name, age and a self-introduction, so we choose our service. Let's see how our data update is implemented. Similarly, let's first see what conditions it needs for data update. We select our enrollment data table in the selection object, and then select it here as our update operation. You can see that first, in the update operation, it has the first filter condition called our filter condition, which is to update when what field is equal to what. Through the previous introduction, I have told you that our data ID is a self-increasing and non-repeating value, so generally speaking, we will take the data ID as a condition for updating. Let's select one of our services. In the parameters received here, we first write our data ID, and then what else? Including our name, age and a self-introduction, and then returning parameters are the same. The most classic is whether our update result is successful and a reason for failure. After defining our receive parameters and return parameters, let's write our update service. Through the introduction just now, you have understood that it is a screening condition for us to choose to update our data ID as much as possible, because this is our one-to-one update, not our batch update. Generally speaking, one-to-one update, we take our data ID as a screening condition, so here is the data ID, which is equal to the data ID we mentioned from the front desk, a value of the data ID handed in, and then here is how to update the qualified records. For example, here, we make a selection in the drop-down menu. Please note that in the drop-down menu, if it is the above, we can see what the color light blue and light blue background prove. The proof is that he receives a parameter from the front end. What we want to select is the following one. In the following one, we can see from the data ID to the update time. During this period, it is a name of a field that we want to select in the backend. Therefore, we need to make the backend field name equal to the name, and copy the field equal to the last name submitted from the frontend a value for the name. In the same drop-down menu, another time is our age. The assigned value is equal to the age submitted by our frontend office. In the same way, the added value is a self-introduction of our backend office, which is equal to the value submitted by us from the frontend office. In this way, we complete a basic update operation. Wait, let's judge a series of branching conditions. If an update result is successful, what does it mean? That means it failed to update, right? So here, we set the return result for it. Whether it succeeds or fails is the reason why we failed to update the result. Why do we set such a setting? Let's share with you here. We change it to other conditions. Under other conditions, its update results are true, so it is indeed updated successfully, but what does it mean that the number of updates in its update results is equal to 0? It did update successfully, but it updated 0 items, indicating whether there is no value that meets our filtering criteria. So under this condition, we add an action, that is, the current service setting returns the result. Because under the other conditions, whether the update result is successful or not, it is indeed successful, but for us, it is a failure. So what are the reasons for the failure? That is, there is no corresponding search condition. If this condition is satisfied, what is the rest? You really succeed. You don't have to write down the reasons for the failure. Here we can return the number of update results to the front end. Therefore, we should pay attention here. There are two possibilities for us to perform updates. The first possibility is that the server is abnormal, that is, the update is not successful at all. So if we say whether the update is successful or not, we will tell the front end that he did not succeed, but why he did not succeed, but we should pay attention to that there is no update on it. What is the explanation? It means that he does not meet such a value as filter criteria, but for our server, he thinks that he has successfully updated, so he does not return an update failure to the front end. So here, we need to do our own branch, that is, if he fails to update, we need to write a null in the success here. Similarly, if the number of updates is not equal to 0, it is that it has actually completed an update. At that time, let's write another one, that is, it has been updated successfully, and here we can carry out a simple debugging. Here, let's update the value with data ID equal to 1, change the name here to a little black, then a 25-year-old, and then introduce myself as little black. Let's have a look. We can see that it has become Xiaohei. My name is Xiaohei at the age of 25. Then let's take a look here. We can see that the data ID is 1234, and then 5 and 6 are deleted in the middle. So here, we change the data ID, and change the assignment to a 5. We debug and see whether it is successful or not. The reason for the failure is that there is no corresponding search condition. Please note that there is no corresponding search condition. How did it come from? It is returned when the number of updates of an update result is equal to 0. So we can see that when the data ID equals 5, for our system, it does perform such an update, but it fails to update any value that meets this condition. Therefore, for him, he thinks that the update is successful, but for us, it fails to update. So whether there is an update of real data, we need to distinguish between update debugging or empty data or data. Okay, let's try again. We adjust a 2-click debugging, and we can see that the two have also been updated successfully. Let's see, Xiaohei has also been updated successfully, which is equivalent to the test of such a service in our backend, and we have completed it. Then we go to the frontend need to do a part of the content to make it up. Similarly, let's add an icon for it. Let's add an editor. It's such an editor. Okay, let's make the font a little smaller. The font here is 15. We also change the font here to a size of 15. Then we let him perform an effect in a play. When you click this icon, we let him perform a new operation. Since this side occupies a 15 wide space, I'm sorry if it's equidistant here. In the same way, we add such an icon to the header here, and the background color is cleared. Then one of its icons is 15 of 15, so that it can be aligned. Of course, there is no icon here. It is okay to use any placeholder. Let's update to our side. Let's make a pop-up window for an update. Therefore, here we add a banner under a page to make an effect of a pop-up window. Add a banner here. The corresponding UI here. We can make an update here copy. Because the content to be updated is nothing more than a series of prepared contents, we copy the data of these 3 lines, and then paste it in the banner. Change a background color of the banner to white. Its width may be a little larger than 250, and then its height should be a little larger than 400. Here, let's give him a little background and mask. It's convenient for us to see an effect of this banner. Let's add a button. This button is called an update. We change the background color a little darker, and then the font size a little smaller. We should also change the size of it a little smaller. For example, we change 100 to 40 here, and then change the rounded corners of one of its borders a little less, and then we give him a 20. Then we select this banner, and we let him carry out an aligned square with the overall horizontal center, then change the overall layout of this banner to a style of 1 center, and then the same sprouting color, we change its path slightly smaller, 30%, so that when I click update, I will perform an update operation on that piece of data. So the name here is changed to an update banner. Of course, the UI of the banner can be done at will, which means it doesn't need to be very fine. So when we click the update button, we will trigger such an updated data in the backend. So we will update and add an event when it is clicked. Why do you call such an action of data update in our backend? You can see how much its data ID is. We don't know it here, but we know what his name, age and self-introduction are updated into, right? So let's write this part first. His name is equal to a content of the name in the input box on our side, his age is equal to a content of the age in the book box, and his self-introduction is equal to a content of the self-introduction in the input box on this side. So, whenever we want to update, we need to get a data ID, and its number. Where does ID come from? We can think about it. When this banner is hidden, I click on such a piece of data. What is it? Because it comes from the loop creation, it must be based on a data on our side, and this data has its data ID. When I click here to edit, can I pass the data ID to a value here? So here we add a variable, that is, our data ID, of course then we pass it on through event. For example, when the data is clicked, it is an edit button here. When it is clicked, why do we assign the value to it, which is equal to our current data assignment, and a data ID of our current data. In this way, if I click which data, I will assign the data ID of which data it's worth it to him. Of course, in addition to such a data ID, we can also copy other values. For example, what should his name be assigned? It is equal to a name of our current data. We can copy and paste it. Then, what is the age on his side? Is the age of our current data. Similarly, a self-introduction here is equal to a self-introduction of our current data. Let's preview an effect of it. For example, now we display two data in each row. Okay, let's modify the age of Xiaohei. When I click the edit button here, I can see that Xiaohei's age and self-introduction have been filled here. We change the name of Xiaohei to Xiaohei, and the age is 25. I call Xiaohei hello, then click an update operation, and you can see that the update is successful. We can go to the database and have a look. We can see Xiaohei in the database. I am Xiaohei. Hello, is the update successful? But what did we find? The data in our front end has not been modified in any way. Why do we take a look at the logic? At the beginning, because the page was displayed, an interface for query was called, so he inquired out a series of corresponding data, and then when I click edit, I inquired the name, age and self of the current data, and the data my introduction and data ID have been passed into our pop-up window. Then when I click the update operation, I pass the corresponding data to the backend, let him perform the update, and then let the system interface display the prompt, and let such a banner be hidden. What do we not do? Are we not updating the front-end data? So it is very simple. If I refresh it, you can see whether the small KK is coming out. But generally speaking, it is impossible for us to say that we will refresh the offline page after submitting every time. What should we do? Is this the same as what we have learned before, and the data rendering in front of us is connected in series again, so here we directly choose what is the registration information in our side? It is called setting a row of data. What is its row number? Is the line number equivalent to which data I want to modify? And where did its ship come from? Does it create a current sequence number corresponding to our cycle? So when he clicks edit, in addition to passing the data ID, should he also pass a current line number? So what's good now? It's good now. What is it? Is it the current serial number corresponding to our side? So when you click update here, its horizontal sign is equal to the current good value passed from our side. Its column is what its name is updated here. Is it updated to this book, a content of the name? What is an age update for tone? As for the content of age here, what is the self-introduction update of Tang? It is a content introduced by ourselves in this input box, which is equivalent to this method. If it returns the result successfully, it is equal to yes. In addition to the prompt display, it is also necessary to manually render a data in our front end for an update. So its data source is our registration information, which is a very good one at present conditions. Update his name, age and self-introduction. Let's have a look again. Here we change the second little black of Xiaohei to a little white. My name is Xiaobai, and then click an update. You can see that this is not an update of the corresponding content, and then the display of the front end has also changed, and then a change has taken place in a little white of the database. Is this a series connection with our front end coming? So here, I would like to summarize for you. When we want to make a series of operations to update, the first is our backend operation. If we want to design an update in the backend, we must select a primary key to update, and the most we use is to update with the data ID as a condition, so the data ID of it is equal to that of the previous one after the data ID is handed in. Perform a batch update operation. Of course, there are many ways to update the FM output according to the data ID, and update the FM output randomly. This kind of update according to the data ID means that our frontend has constructed his data. For example, we pull an array of our objects, and then add various values in the array of objects through the method of setting values. When we click to confirm, we will directly submit our entire array of objects with data ID to the backend. We can use such an operation to update according to the data ID, directly replace only one batch of objects in the database, and then update one item here and output it. Then we can output the updated data to the frontend, and then this if one edge randomly updates one and outputs it, it means that one is randomly selected, and then an output is carried out after the update. When random extraction is not repeated, such an operation of randomly updating one and outputting is often used. Of course, the simplest thing is to use such an update operation directly. Then, when we perform the update operation, we should pay attention to whether the database update is successful or not. It is to tell us whether the service has completed an execution. In his eyes, if you update 0 items, it is equivalent to not meeting the conditions. He also thinks he has succeeded, but for our actual business logic of updating, it is a failure. So whenever it comes to updating, we have to judge whether the service caused the failure, or the failure caused by no retrieval conditions, or the final update was successful. Therefore, when completing the update, we should complete at least one of these settings. Then there is a series of updates in our frontend. When we go to update the frontend, we usually make a pop-up window to update it. In addition, we also designed a copy of the current flight number and the current serial number, and such a current flight number is equal to the current serial number to meet the last unified update of our front-end data. Therefore, we pass our data ID and our current serial number, and their functions are totally different. Therefore, when we carry out an update operation, we should be careful. Generally speaking, whenever we are involved in pop-up updates, we need to pass our data ID and our current line number, attach an initial value to such an input box of our update, and then display our pop-up box. Then when the pop-up box, such as a root button, is activated, we can judge whether it has been updated in the backend. If the backend has completed the update, we will prompt for the success of the update, and update a series of data in our front end through the condition of our current line number, and then let the banner hide. If he fails, we will directly ask him to meet to prompt a failure reason of the return result. Therefore, everyone should pay attention to that the backend is the backend, and we will update the frontend after things are successful. If not, we will only prompt that this is also a practice of complete separation of the front and back office. Big housework must cause enough attention. That's all the content of this section. Thank you for watching.